All right, so good evening, everybody. It's July 16th, 2025. We are here discussing Book 9 of Paradise Lost. We took a week off last week as I was out of town, but we will be continuing on Book 9 this week, Book 10 the next week, and then Books 11 and 12 the week after that, and that'll be a wrap. So we'll be done. We have 3 more classes. We're reaching the climax of the poem here, as I talked about in the overview video. So we've had the rising action just coming up the hill, coming up the hill, and like we're there. Like we all know the dreadful inevitable that's coming here with the fall of Adam and Eve, right? And this is where that's going to happen. So inevitably there's going to be a lot to talk about, even though we all, in a sense, know the story. Milton, as Milton does, is going to provide his own imaginative way of challenging us with things we don't explicitly know from scripture, as he again always does. So with that being said, we get, as we usually do, if not always do, we get a description here at the beginning of Book 9. It runs all the way up to line 86. So does anybody have any favorite descriptive lines or sections of those first 86 lines?
I did love all the classical allusions that I was able to get, or rather just explicit references, because I was like, oh, look, just at the beginning, like Achilles and Turnus from the Aeneid, and then we have the ire of Neptune and Juno. So it's just like references to like the Aeneid and then to Homer. So it's like, that was pretty cool. I liked, yes. It was just interesting to see that comparison, because he's basically taking this classical idea of heroism and almost like subverting it and saying there's something more, which is something I've kind of been noticing throughout the book already. So it's cool to see him kind of expound on that a little more.
Yeah, so do you think that's the purpose of what he's doing there? Because he kind of talks about these things. I mean, the upstern Achilles on his foe pursued, thrice fugitive. I assume that's got to be like a direct allusion to like the fact that like he chases Hector around Troy 3 times, right? So is he like, he's specifically, there's a lot of things that are virtuous about Hector, and that's usually pretty clearly articulated by any teacher or student of Homer, but he's specifically picking out like a moment in the story where, you know, Hector is perhaps at his weakest or his most vulnerable or most easy to criticize in a way, right? He's exhibiting the vice of cowardice, perhaps, in a way. In context, maybe that can be debated. But why do you think he is choosing to highlight that specifically, or to highlight Turnus the way that he does, even as well, either or both and?
It is interesting. I'm trying to think why Turnus, specifically. It is interesting. Just that he chooses characters that generally aren't, especially in moments too, that aren't generally super favorable to them. You know, whatever you say about Hector, like Achilles is basically not a fan favorite character, I would say, in the Iliad. And this is the moment where Hector, who is rather more of a favorite character, he's about to basically kill him. And then we have with Turnus, like basically bringing all this war against the hero of the Aeneid. Of course, he does feel wronged, but then he just, like, you know, brings destruction. So it's interesting that he picks these characters too. And then also like bringing up Neptune and Juno's anger too. At least thinking of like Juno, basically, just she's like characterized in the Aeneid. She's like super bitter, like vengeful, jealous. It's not a good thing. Her wrath. So against man. So it does seem like he's using all these examples are like classical characters, and it's not necessarily maybe a flattering anger.
Is this so? Maybe I'm like, I don't know this like material, but just from hearing what you're saying, I mean, is it like that at these points in the story, like those are your heroes, and so far we've seen Adam as being a hero to us, and then it's about to be where basically the villain wins for a short time and then followed by, righteous anger from God in terms of a disobedience. Is that kind of what it's looking like? I just don't know the material enough to.
It's an interesting idea for sure. I mean, this is like, and we can like debate this in a lot of different places and a lot of different literature, right? Where it's like, can something have multiple meanings? And I think the answer is obviously yes. Like, do we know if the author intended for there to be multiple meanings? Sometimes we can know. Sometimes, a lot of the time, I think that's very hard to discern. But I think those are both like good ideas, right? He seems to be. These illusions they're portrayed in the negative, right? So he's giving us these negative symbols in a way, right? So there's clearly some connection here. I mean, right out of the gates in line 6, those notes to tragic, foul distrust and breach, disloyal on the part of man, revolt and disobedience. So he's changing the notes to tragic, right? That's the way he puts it. So he's clearly indicating at the beginning of this book that's like, here's the shift to tragedy. Like, we're getting a tonal shift here completely. It's not just climactic, but it's really a complete shift of tone in that way. And obviously the readers of this, Christian and non-Christian in Western society, really know where this is all going. But yeah, I wonder, because it could be in part he's doing something to contrast his conception of heroism with those conceptions of heroism, but it could also be something to do with just like preparing, contrasting those against Adam, like Adam before the fall and what's going to happen with him afterwards, right? Like that could certainly be part of it. I think the former is definitely pretty like explicit in the text, but I could see them both personally.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody else have any lines before we start getting into more of the dialogue? All right, we can move on.
I was just gonna say, I do think that it's interesting to see him like kind of worried that he's going to be able to fully tell the tale, where he says later on, he says that name in less than age too late, or a cold climate, or years damp, my intended wing depressed. Just kind of like 3 things that keep him from kind of completing his heroic tale, or could keep him from that. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so when we move forward, we get Satan, who is our first speaker in this. So there's kind of like a setup there, right? Where in a sense, like Satan is like the first speaker again, right? Like it's been a little bit where he's been speaking in these sort of like almost timeless flashbacks in Raphael's story, but now he's very much back in the thick of the plot, right? Like he's coming back into it, and he makes it very clear, like he's coming and what he's going to do. But lines 114 to 123, I think, are worth reading. Where he says, "With what delight could I have walked thee round, if I could joy in aught, sweet interchange of hill and valley, rivers, woods, and plains, now land, now sea and shores, with forest crowned, rocks, dens, and caves. But I, in none of these find place or refuge, and the more I see pleasures about me, so much more I feel torment within me, as from the hateful siege of contraries. All good to me becomes bane, and in heaven much worse would be my state." So we get this is like a classic Miltonian like Satan line, right? Like gosh, it's like he almost has you again in this poem where he's like appreciating the paradise that he has lost, right? Like Adam and Eve are going to lose and haven't yet at this point. Like he's appreciating that in a sense, but but it always turns back to the, like, if I can't have it, no one can, right? Like it's like I'd rather just I'd rather do my own thing, even though I know conforming to the good, aka obedience to God, is the way. It's like that's still in my mind the worst way, and I'm going to go about my own way and try to create my own reality. But all good to me becomes bane. I mean, just like what do you all think? Like, what's Satan's biggest problem here? Like, and like why doesn't he like good things?
I mean, later on we see how much envy is basically a thing, and just envy both of God and of man. And he wants it all for himself. Like, he does not care about any of the other beings, even if he like pontificates and says like, I freed all these people. But yeah, it's just so weird to see him like for a second being like, oh man, this is truly beautiful, and then just be like, but I can't even. All this blades of grass are evil. It's just funny.
I think, God is himself the source and essence of all goodness, truth, and beauty. And so he is basically like, he's like bent, he's corrupted, he doesn't have a right relation to God. He's seeking to become God and supplant him. And so he's like supplanting or trying to supplant that source of goodness, truth, and beauty. So like everything that flows out of God's nature, so that everything that is good and true and beautiful is like repugnant to him in a sense. But he still can't destroy the fact that he's a creature created by God. So he still has a sense where he understands that something is beautiful, but he can't appreciate it because like he is at enmity with God. He's like bent, he's twisted, and because of that, he can't see things right. He can't love what God loves and hate what God hates, because he himself has twisted himself and become what God hates. So it's impossible for him to just be objectively outside of himself and view everything that God's created. Like Milton says, like he brings his own hell with him.
Yeah, exactly. It's another one of those. It's like brings hell with him. All good to me becomes bane. Better to reign in hell than to serve it. Like, you could just chalk up all. Like, there's so many like quotable lines.
Sayings.
They're quotable for all the wrong reasons, right? Like, they're everything like we don't want to embody like the worst in us as sinners, right? But it's like it's like it sucks that we have to like admit that we relate to those lines in some way at times, but like we do. They resonate with us, and I think it's twofold in a sense, right? Where it's like they resonate with us because it's the worst in us, but they also resonate in us because like those of us who like we're sinners, but we're Christians, we're redeemed by the grace of God. We do have like a disposition of hatred for that lifestyle, for the sin itself, right? For that rebellion against God, and we know that it's wrong, and we have a passion to not live that way, even though sometimes we are that way in our hearts, right? So I think it's kind of twofold there, and I think it's like part of why we resonate with Satan so much, as we, all have to admit that we have at times in this poem, right? It's a strange dichotomy, like it really is.
And you can kind of see him like it's basically like he's like slathering concrete around his heart, like it's like for a second there's a peak. He's like, no, I gotta fill that hole. It's just crazy.
He doubled down. He's doubling down.
Only in destroying
down.
I find ease. In woe then that destruction wide may range. To me shall be the glory soul among the infernal powers. In one day to have marred what the Almighty styled 6 days and nights continued making, and who knows how long before had been contriving. Like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, doubling down is like the theme of Satan throughout this thing.
I don't know why I just had this thought, because I watch this movie every year at Christmas, sometimes 2 or 3 times, and you might even know where I'm going with this.
Yes.
But there's popped in my mind where it's like, it reminds me of that scene in It's a Wonderful Life where like George like gets the offer from Potter, but it's a reversal because like George is the good guy and Potter is like he's about to like shake hands with the devil, right? Because he gets this, what is it, like $8,000 a year salary, which in like the 1940s, that was like really good. And he's like, couple of business trips to New York, occasionally to Europe, and he's like, buy fine jewelry for your wife and all this stuff. Like he's charming. Every time I saw him, and George is kind of like, yeah, he's enticed. But he's like, no, wait a minute. Like he's like this slimy snake basically, and he doubles down and tells him off. It's like Satan's the opposite of that, where it's like, no, like you should be shaking hands with the ways of God, but like you don't. And it's like, I don't know why that thought just like it's a Wonderful Life just pops in my mind like off and on. It basically just pops up in my mind recurringly throughout my life, and I have no shame about that. So I had to make that reference there.
One thing that really intrigued me, like just going a little bit later on in his soliloquy, so to speak, the lines where he says, "O foul descent, that I who erst contended with gods to sit the highest, am now constrained into a beast, and mixed with bestial slime, this essence too incarnate and in brute, that to the height of deity aspired, but what will not ambition and revenge descend to?" And I just thought, there's basically this contrast that seems to be set up there between Christ and Satan, where Satan's despairing about having to take the form of the snake, but he says, but what will not ambition and revenge descend to? Versus Christ willingly taking on the form of man, but because of his great love, rather than because of ambition and revenge. So it's almost like he's drawing this like parallel in the wording there, in the way Satan says that. Basically saying like, the only reason Satan can conceive of wanting to put himself into a lower being, although in a sense Satan himself is lower than the snake because he's fallen, is because of his ambition and revenge. He can't conceive of love, and so he can't even foresee what's going to happen. That his deeds here, that God is going to find a way to redeem. Like what happens.
Yes, absolutely. And you're picking that up for sure, because I definitely think that 163 to 178, that Satan's like soliloquy there about the serpent and taking on the form. But I think there's definitely some anti-Christ imagery going on there, right? Like even like Satan going through the mouth of the serpent, right? It's almost like a reversal of like the breathing forth of like the spirit in a way, which in a sense, sorry to like my Eastern friends, but if like those of us that are Westerners in our theological ways believe in like the filioque way, so it's like the Holy Spirit like proceeds from the Father and the Son in a way, like the Spirit, the Spiritus, the pneuma, right? Like the Holy Spirit, like it's breathed forth by God eternally, right? So it's breathed forth by the Father and the Son. So it's like it's almost like a reversal of that in a way, right? But yeah, there's this essence to incarnate, right? Like, I mean, that's like the most clear. That's line 166.
I knew as soon as I saw that word.
It's right there. I was like, ding, ding, ding. Like that's like anti-Christ imagery, right? Like that's. But it's really interesting that like we get this from Milton, right? Like, he actually tells us, like why Satan chose the serpent, right? Like it's like interesting thought, because.
Yeah.
You could read Genesis and be like, oh, why of all the animals? And it's probably not the craziest question in the world, because like even just like growing up, like knowing the Genesis story, and like you get older and you're like, you just associate like snakes with kind of being like these slimy, these sort of like dastardly, diabolical, like sneaky, cunning creatures, right? Like I mean, you think of for anyone that grew up on or even like just saw it later in life, like the Harry Potter, like Slytherin, like it's like all that stuff, the snake, like the basilisk, like it's like snakes are creepy, they're slimy, but they're usually almost symbolic of like they're not like brute force like grunt evil, they're cunning, they're deceitful, they're crafty, right? And it's like but Milton did take the time. And I'm not sure how snakes would have been understood by the common person or the average reader in his time, and if that's been changed at all since our time. But he does take time to like show us that, like the kind of the scanning of the different animals and picking out the serpent specifically for that reason. So it's like I always thought that part was really interesting.
Yeah, it's just interesting too to see, and this could just be an impact of in real life of simply the fact that Satan did choose to take the form of a serpent. because the number of like serpent worship cults and religions, I mean, you pretty much all throughout the world in human history, these like snakes have been worshipped. Even the Israelites started worshiping the bronze serpent that had formerly saved them from the serpents in the wilderness. So it is interesting. There's something about the demonic that, whether because of Satan originally or just something with snakes, I guess, finds that form to be like, appealing. You see all these false gods that are like snakes, represented as snakes. And thinking of like the story of like St. Patrick and like Ireland, you know, a story that all the snakes fled, or at least that he rid the island of snake worship.
One of those things where it's like, I don't know if it's true, but I kind of hope it is. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that being like canon in the church, by the way, like totally. Just like I'm okay with like Saint George, like in the whole like the Dragon Slayer story arc. I'm like I don't know what exactly that means, but I love it. It's like up there with like Grendel being a descendant of Cain. I'm just like I'm here for all of this, guys. Like, let's go. Like, always give me the most mythological explanation, please.
I am here for all the theories. I don't know if you guys ever like listen. This is a side note, but if you ever listen to the podcast Haunted Cosmos, I'm a little obsessed.
I've heard of that, but I've never listened to it.
I think you would love it.
Oh no, it's Haunted Bookshelf. I have like my friend gave me like this brand of like pipe tobacco, and I thought it was called Haunted Cosmos, but I just looked and it's Haunted Bookshelf.
Haunted Cosmos is like
weird connection there. I never thought that would come up in this chat. So
yeah, it's a great one for all the different stories.
Even if you aren't convinced, it's still fun to just be along for the ride.
Yes,
hear these stories.
Yes, and it's absolutely no fun when like people just are curmudgeons and they like shut them down, and because everything has to be like overly literal all the time, right? So I'm like I don't know how that all shook out. Like it's like I'm here for it though. I hope I found out it's true someday. So,
I like the one portion where this is just on like 150-ish, but he says, talking about man, a creature formed of earth and him endow, exalted from so base original, with heavenly spoils, our spoils. I just love that where it's like you can even just hear him just be like so angered, you know, wrathful about it.
Yeah.
Do we have anything more to say about Satan? There's always more to say about Satan, but at this point in time, he'll come back later, obviously. So
no, but he's Satan as usual, as you're saying,
working around,
and
right?
he just continues to be true to his nature, so to speak. His nature being the fallen version of himself.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to Adam and Eve, right? We get this scene. They're here. They have their lovely liturgical morning, right? And they stop labor. It's like I talked about this in the video, but it's just like any other day, right? Like it's like this is the fall. Like this is the fall of man that's gonna happen, and just like the worst day in human history. Like objectively, just the worst day in all of human history. Started off like a normal day, right? As like many unfortunately many people, awful days in their lives do start off. I guess that's not always unfortunate, but you don't see it coming, right? We live in that dramatic irony, just like Adam and Eve are living the dramatic irony here. But what do you think of? So they're going out these things, and then Eve suggests for them to divide their labors, right? Like, does she have any justification or basis for suggesting such a thing? Like, is there any benefit to them dividing their labors in context with knowing that Raphael just told them this lengthy story and warned them of all of this?
I don't think so. Like I don't believe that they would actually need, if the garden was made for them to tend to, I don't see it as God have made it needed to be tended to by 100 people right from the beginning, you know, where they would need to like divide their labor. I don't think so.
Yeah, and also I think we see later on that Eve's motivations here are not quite. She's providing this reason for them to separate, but I don't think that's necessarily why she wants to. I don't think she's like, we should separate just so that we can accomplish more work. Like, I don't think it's a coincidence that this day of all days, after hearing what Raphael says, that she, and after already having Satan kind of like starting to put temptations, like with the dream that she had, where he's really like appealing to her vanity and like various things. Like, I don't think that just came from nowhere. And like later we see, I mean, part of it seems to be later on, we don't have to like skip that far ahead yet, but in their conversation about whether they should separate or not, you know, it seems she's looking for like basically almost looking for trouble. She wants an opportunity to like prove her own strength in a sense, and almost like, I don't need you, Adam. I don't need I'm strong enough on my own to withstand temptation, and almost like wanting to seek it out and like prove herself in a sense seems to at least be part of her motivation. But obviously the first time she's like, oh, we should separate to get more work done. But like, of course, today of all days is the day that you tell Adam this, like.
Yeah, then she comes in and she gets more into it, right? So starting at 3:26 here, it's like, how are we happy still in fear of harm? But harm precedes not sin, only our foe. Tempting affronts us with his foul esteem of our integrity. His foul esteem sticks no dishonor on our front, but turns foul on himself. Then wherefore shunned or feared by us, who rather double honor gain, from his surmise proved false, find peace within, favor from heaven, our witness from the event? And what is faith, love, virtue unassayed, alone, without exterior help sustained? Let us not then suspect our happy state left so imperfect by the Maker wise, as not secure to single or combined. Frail is our happiness if this be so, and Eden were no Eden thus exposed. So she's providing this whole argument here, right, where she's like, you know, like what kind of life is it if like if we have to like live in fear in a sense, right? Like, she's totally missing the point here, by the way, right? But she's almost making this argument. It's like, no, we should be secure in ourselves, where like we don't have to like live in fear of what Raphael just warned us about. We should just be able to go out and just to be just to experience the happiness and bliss of Eden, and it's all good basically. If we're separated, it's going to be fine. Like, we can't live in fear, Adam. It's like, that's kind of like her argument, summarized, maybe a little bit oversimplified, but
is this the first time that she, like, I want to say like challenges authority, but like basically like pushes back at all on just kind of what he's saying they should do?
I think in a sense, yes. I can't like fully answer that question without thinking about it and like looking into other passages longer. But there's definitely this sense where like there's a non-sinful way in which like Eve can still sometimes be like flirtatious and like playful, right? Because that's not like an inherently wrong or bad type of thing. And like, it's good that like she has to kind of like, you know, play around a little, and Adam has to like go like pursue her, right? Like, I think that says something about like the substance of man and woman, right? Like, of masculinity, femininity, like how people like court and get married and such. Like, that all makes sense. But I think this is like, obviously, like, that's in a sense they're really unaware before Raphael shows up. They're pretty ignorant of just general dangers and such things. Like, she gets the dream. Satan like whispers the dream into her. She's troubled by that. A little bit after that, Raphael shows up, and that kind of changes things, because now you'd expect them that Raphael has told them the story. He's educated them. He's trained them in every way he he could seemingly to prepare them for this moment, for this day, for something like this to arise. So there's a sense where I think Adam's kind of pushing back or trying to be firm, at least at first, about that because he knows the dangers of what's coming, and like Eve's just for whatever reason not really taking that seriously. But we can't just sit here and point the finger at Eve, of course, either, because at the end of the day, it is Adam's responsibility to lead her in this, and like he ultimately lets her go off, right? Like that's a problem. Like, right? Shouldn't he have done something different than that? Like, should he have allowed that to happen?
No.
I personally would say no, right? And I think that's the point, right? Like that's what Milton's doing here. But yeah, and because you could sit here and you could say like who's at bigger fault here, right? And we could hash that out if we wanted to, but this is where I think this highlights it highlights really just like the weakness of both of them in a sense, right? Where it's like, and this is before the fall, but after the fall, like we kind of see this where it's like women are gonna struggle to perhaps manipulate their way into getting what they want out of things. There's a sense where we see this as a product of the fall too, and it's highlighted here in book 9, which we get to later. But like these feminist ideals we see today are kind of present in the fall, where it's like the woman wants to supplant the male leadership, like she wants more power in that, and the man, they kind of respond in two incorrect ways. It's either one, passivity and just allowing to get steamrolled by the woman who's in a sense like out of line with her ideals, her beliefs, her approaches here, or the man can like become a total tyrant about it and like be in extreme cases do some horrendous things as well, like verbally, physically, etc., right, in a response to like double down on like authority, right? So it's like obviously neither of those are the correct answer, and we all know that. But we're getting these pictures of just like what's the differences between like fallen masculinity and fallen femininity, right? Like it's like they have many things in common, but there's specifics to the genders, I think, that are shown off here, and they really do tell us something about men and women and really how that looks. I'm assuming no pushback on that in this class. What are you talking about? I'm an egalitarian, Josh. Like it's like there's no distinctions. It's like I'm sorry, there are.
The
Like
voice you just used. The voice you just used was the way you said that was just funny. Like the
thank you.
Voice.
If we read some of the modern,
I have like 40 like character voices. I read stuff to my kids, and like I'm reading Aesop's Fables a lot to my oldest, and like it's like I have a voice for like the wolf, the fox, like the different lions, like all of that stuff. Oh yeah, like the sheep. It's like I wasn't even born. Yeah, like that's how the sheep has to talk, right? So like it's like a little baby sheep. So there you have it. Anyway, none of my impressions. Don't want to waste more time on that. So.
I think if we went to some of the modern criticisms included in this book, you would definitely see like what you're saying.
Yeah, like it's you're gonna see this, right? So and there's a thing like certainly like different like critical theories have been around for God knows how long, but generally in the 20th century you get people in universities who get like really into like reading old books through like 20th century specific lenses, right? And so like there's like a school called like feminist criticism, there's Marxist criticism, right? There's queer criticism that tries to read all these things through what they can kind of connect through these lenses, and there's like many disconnects that we could rant about right now that I won't digress to, but that is definitely one of them, right? Where it's like Milton is one of Lord knows how many classic authors who could get either picked apart, or like somebody could try to like work a complete misconstrual and like into like their own puzzle to completely change the meaning, right? And I don't know how much the latter has happened, but the former, yeah, there's plenty of antagonism about Milton being like a chauvinist and such things, and it just fails to understand the context too of a lot of these things, because I mean I don't think there's anything about Milton that is very anti-women at all. In fact, I think he actually has a lot of honest and good things to say about men and women. I think he's very real in that regard. He had at least, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, I know he had 3 daughters for sure. I don't know if he had I think he had 3 daughters and a son, but he definitely had 3 daughters. They were like his scribes. Like he dictated Paradise Lost to them a lot because he was blind when he wrote all of this, right? Like he would, I try not to laugh when I say this, but like he would yell to them basically something along the lines of like, "I need to be milked," like when he like had like an idea and he wanted to write it down. So I don't know if that meant something, if that was like a less weird thing to say in like the 1660s, but I think I died laughing like the first time one of my professors told me that.
Oh my goodness.
And and the thing is like if he if he hated women or something, you would think his daughters may not write down exactly what he was saying. Like they could just change the story.
They wouldn't write it down with the exact spelling he wanted.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, he was like married 3 times too, and it's not because of like divorce or like a crazy like promiscuous or like insane like authoritarian life. It's like, I mean, unfortunately people died a lot more often in like their younger middle-aged years back in his time, and it's like, yeah, he had lost spouses before his last wife outlived him, but he had lost spouses. But yeah, it's like, I mean, there's really nothing to say that Milton's like chauvinistic in any way. It's quick digression, but it kind of reminds me of like that critic who like, I can't remember the exact story, but basically they were like calling like C.S. Lewis a chauvinist for something in like the 20th century, and then like the same critic like read Till We Have Faces, not knowing who the author was, and they're like, this book must have been written by a woman because there's no way a man could understand women that well. And he finds out it's written by C.S. Lewis. He's like, dang it. He's like, no. He's like, he proved himself wrong.
That makes me so happy.
I know, it's so just,
I love, like, I forget what it was. This is another side note. I was reading that was like something of C.S. Lewis's that like Ayn Rand had, like, it was her marginalia on it. And it was interesting, to say the least. Let's just say lots of ad hominems were present.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me at all.
It was actually kind of amusing, though.
Yeah, I'm sure. Podcasts of idea talk about different critical responses in the 20th century to C.S. Lewis. We have to talk about George Orwell, of course, responding to that hideous strength, and Merlin being in there, but we won't digress any further. Podcast episode idea, write it down.
Okay.
So like, I mean, we kind of hit on this earlier, but I did like just want to like emphasize again the point that like Satan is like he's taken in by Eve before he goes in to talk to her, and it's just like we see this when he first arrives at Eden, right, back in book 4, and then we see this again earlier here when he's looking at Eden in the first 200 or so lines of this book, and it's like, it's just, I almost like it almost always surprises me a little bit for some reason that Satan, like, he always actually has to, like, he, at least at times, I shouldn't say always, but at times he has to struggle with experiencing the good, like coming to face with like the goodness of God's creation, right? Like in just the image of God untainted in man and woman, but also like the unfallen like cosmos in a sense, or at least the unfallen Eden. Not unfallen cosmos is debatable, but I always find that really interesting, and it's always like it pulls you in for a second, right? It's always like that, like there's that tension where it's like you can kind of see something good, but at this point, like, you're almost not fooled, right? Where it's like, that like you're kind of being taken in with like something about Satan that almost seems perhaps slightly redeemable, and then he just like, completely just destroys any reason for you to feel that way about him, like immediately after. Reoccurring theme here.
It is interesting because, he says basically like Satan took pleasure to behold the form of Eve. Like it uses, like Milton uses the word pleasure, which is interesting. So like how can Satan even feel any good? Or like can he even, you're saying basically like he struggles with like beholding the good sometimes. I'm like, can Satan though? Like, and I do believe that like, fallen humans, I believe, no matter how fallen they are, can still perhaps like struggle with that, but it's like, can Satan actually, like, I almost just kind of struggle with that myself, because I'm thinking, is he just too far gone to even like appreciate, like maybe he could be like, wow, but then I don't know, the fact that he's just like it says like he took pleasure in like beholding Eve and like the flowers, it's just, I don't know.
Is that like lusting almost? Like, I mean,
Yeah, there's some weird
pleasurable like lust, or
And that's the question, is like, what is pleasure? What's the connotation of that, right? Like, how is that word being used in this context?
Yeah,
Like,
because like earlier, Milton was saying, or Satan was saying, like the character Satan was saying, like, oh, I can't basically experience anything that's like, good anymore. Everything's just suffering. But I suppose, yeah, you're right. In the context, it could be more of like, it just depends, like the definition.
Mm-hmm. And I certainly think you get something there, Hannah, because I even like get the sense like with like back in book 4 with Satan, where it's like and it shouldn't be surprising given that he's Satan and how far he's gone, but it's like Satan's kind of he's kind of creepy, It's like I think that's intentional. Like it's like he's like Eve is beautiful, Satan's creepy, and like you get his perspective on that, and it's weird, and like I think that's all authorial intended, right? Like I think Milton's just he's trying to highlight that that dimension of sin and rebellion, I think, in a sense there. The perversion of like appreciating beauty in like a human being properly, right? Like that's warped, and I think that's shown there with Satan, both in book 4 and here in book 9.
Yeah, and then it's just interesting to see, like, I don't know if you have anything else to say about that part, but just when he starts actually talking to her, because it is creepy. He just like sneaks up behind her, and she doesn't notice he's there. So that's just like, okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to see like a cinematic version of some of these scenes. You'd just be like, oh, he's so weird. Like, especially if you look at the Satan in like the Passion of the Christ movie, where he's like this androgynous, like really pale looking. You guys know what I'm talking about? Like, have you ever seen that movie?
I actually have not, but what you're describing does sound interesting.
Oh, you could Google it if you want, but I don't want to I don't want you to have like trouble sleeping tonight. But it's like discretion like warned. I didn't make you do it, but you can look it up if you want. I told you, it's like something out of like Insidious or something like that. Yeah,
that's kind of disturbing.
Okay. Yeah, especially like the image with like the baby as well. It's yeah.
Okay.
I hope you sleep well tonight. That movie came out when I was like 9 or 10. It used to scare me a little bit. So, but that's I mean, probably not what Milton's Satan looks like. But either way, it would be creepy. I think that's intended.
Mm-hmm.
So. Moving on from there, obviously, we get to one of the more intense dialogues within Paradise Lost, and we get the scene where Satan starts really whipping out his arsenal of rhetoric against Eve to get her to take of the fruit and to disobey, right? And so, he really opens with flattery in a sense, but like, is there more to it than that, right? Like, it's not just flattery, right? Like, there's more to it that really finally captivates Eve, right?
He's trying to like exalt her, like make her into an idol almost. Like he's venerating her, and multiple times he even like uses the word worship. I started like underlining things you were saying that would be like blasphemous or idolatrous to say of a created creature. And he would mix it in with things that were still true. Like, things about her that are true and things that Adam has said of her. But then he also mixes it in with these things that are placing her in the position of God. Even just saying that she's like a goddess among gods. She should be adored and served by angels numberless, thy daily train. It's just in the first speech. That's like his first little dialogue to her where he's like flattering her. It's very intentional. He's not just saying like things to make her like him, but it's like specifically to make her desire to be worshipped in a way that they're treated in a way that she should not, which is to be worshipped. And that's like kind of going to come in with the fruit, because he's going to play on the desire of wanting to become like God and become a goddess. So he's already like introducing that theme right at the beginning.
It's really like a build up to that, isn't it? I mean, like the flattery is just like, those are just like his opening lines in a sense.
Yeah.
Right? That's like he's just kind of warming up with the flattery, but like it really actually builds to what he's really after, and it's really that like root of pride, right? Like he's enticing her with this idea too of like, okay, how do you think? Like I'm a snake. Like how do you think I learned how to talk, right? And like all of these kinds of
curiosity.
Like, oh yeah, curiosity, right? Like
yes.
It's like in its negative medieval sense, right? Like he's appealing to that in a way, and he's really drawing her into that, right? It's like the things that you shouldn't be, in a sense, genuinely curious of, but the things that are really dangerous to want, right? Like it's like they're not supposed to want, at least not right now, right? It's arguable that at one point they could receive sort of like an elevation to the angelic sort of being in a way, but at this point in Eden, like they're not supposed to want to partake of the fruit. They're supposed to be okay with what God has given them, right? Like it's the I'm just telling you, and there's a sense with like this connects like to parenting, where it's like it's good to invoke wonder, answer questions, ask better questions, but sometimes it's just like the because I say so answer. There's a time and place for that in a sense, right? And it's like I think that's true because like God gives that answer, right? It's kind of like the Job asked God all these questions finally, and then God like just responds to the question. Yeah, like it's the like, so where were you when I created the heavens and the earth and such things, right? Like it's kind of the same way here, where it's like this is like you just have to be obedient. Like that's the one thing. And it's like even like Raphael gives them warnings about such things, but that's the appeal. That's what he uses here. And it's significant that that's the appeal. It's really not the flattery or the goddess stuff. And in a way it relates to all of that, but he's really getting after like that knowledge, that godlike status and understanding in a way.
Yeah, I will say, like, reading this section of the temptation, I was thinking, man, like, I mean, I don't know if anyone, in a sense, could by themselves, like, resist the temptation that Satan is giving. Like, he's just so convincing and, like, at his highest degree of rhetorical skill. And you almost, like, feel tempted to be, like, I feel too for Eve, but she herself in this position, almost like in her pride of like seeking out the opportunity to stand alone, but like not protecting herself, not listening to what Adam. There's all that behind this, and then of course like when she's in this position, like obviously, I mean, she just have Milton emphasizes like she has free choice, but it seems, I mean, it would, I don't know, I can't see like a alternate reality where at this point in the story she was able to resist by herself.
Yeah. I feel like it's so easy to, I know you always said like we can see ourselves so much in Adam and Eve, but I could also see where people look at this and they're like, man, how did this person fall for it? But they're like they're the original, like the ones that probably would have been the best at saying no to it, and they failed, so we would definitely fail too.
Yeah, I was thinking if I was there, I don't think things would be going very well.
You're like, yeah, sounds great. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's like Eve even like howled out like a little bit, at least like she had some questions first. Certainly no excuse, but I think it is true that like perhaps if I think if like her and Adam had been together, they would have been able to, like Adam was saying, to like mutually help each other to fight the temptation. And I think he would have been a little less taken in by the, oh, I'm just a serpent who ate the fruit of the tree. I think he might have had more questions.
Yeah, most likely. Certainly, like given, especially what we get with Adam, like books 5 through 8, I think that's very likely. So,
Yeah.
Wants to know like every crazy like metaphysical idea. Adam would have loved to read like Aquinas' Summa. Like he'd be like, "Oh man, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life." Like he would have loved it.
Yeah,
sure. He would have been like a scholastic philosopher in the Middle Ages. So this brings up kind of an interesting like this idea. Let's get into this idea of like them being the people in the situation, and if they like if there's any way like they couldn't have fallen, or like how would they have not fallen, right? Because there's this I think about this sometimes. I'm trying to like think of how to relate this here, but just like how much people can be responsible for what they know and have experienced based on just where they're at providentially in like space and time. And this is kind of different and not sure how that would work in an Edenic sense. But I even think of just like the fact that, you know, this reminds me of a discussion I had in a class one time where we were talking about like Augustine's Manichaean beliefs, like in the Confessions. And a student was basically like, we had a professor who was explaining like basically like the metaphysics and just beliefs of like the Manichaean worldview at that time. And somebody was like, this stuff like sounds absolutely bonkers. Like, why would anybody believe this? And the professor would just respond. He's like, you know, Augustine's probably like one of the smartest men of like that entire era of like Western history. And he's like, I think if he fell for it, we probably all would have too. Like he would have like we all could have easily believed the wrong thing. So I wonder if there's like a connection here with that, right? Like where it's like would we have been the same way? Like, and it's like what needed to happen for them to not fall, right? Like that's a really high question. There's probably like, many different ways to answer that, but like how would they have not fallen in a way? If anybody has any thoughts on any of that.
I just think like just looking at my life, like I know that we're born in sin, like, you know, we're sinful creatures, but even just like trying to like kill sin in your own life and saying no to some temptation, like these people or Adam and Eve are ones that had never even like had to deal with it at all before this happened. And the only reason I feel like I'm able to like say no to temptation is because I've probably fallen to it before, you know, of something that I may be more likely to sin for. And also, I mean, obviously the Holy Spirit helping me through it, you know, but it's interesting to think what that would be like.
Yeah, it's hard to know. There's a sense that they had more freedom than, and I see freedom as like, you know, just, you know, I just see it as like, it's not necessarily absolute, especially for us, like today, which does not negate like personal responsibility, but in the sense of like, you know, we're already born with a sin nature, for example. So like it's impossible for us not to sin, for example. And like, that's not to get into all that. But anyway, like Adam and Eve didn't have that. Like they were in a sense more free than any human that's come after them because they were originally not enslaved to sin. So, or had that nature. So it is hard to know. I mean, I tend to think like in God's providence, like that was happened. It's hard to speculate about what would have happened. But I certainly think if Adam had basically, it's always like if Adam had, if Eve had, but I think if they had stayed together, if Adam had been with Eve, And if she'd been with him, like, I at least think there's a much better chance of them surviving temptation. I think also, like, God wouldn't have allowed them to just completely go just for hours and hours, like constantly dealing with Satan for the rest of time. But it was certainly like he allowed Satan to be there to test their faithfulness. So like if they were together, even though like they might have both broken down eventually under Satan, like, I don't think that God would have necessarily allowed that to happen if they had at least endured for a time, like the temptation. I don't know.
Good point.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think that God would have allowed Satan to just be there, like constant presence, just saying lies and temptations, but more of like just for this one moment.
Yeah, like even with Adam, like if he had stayed firm and his like resolved to like say no to her and deny that request, basically, would she have kept doing it all the time? Like, would it be like every day she'd wake up and be like, well, hey, today let's try it this way, and then just giving the opening to Satan. He just had to do his laps every night and then come back and tempt the humans again.
Getting his step goal in.
These ideas definitely like are interesting as they get explored in other areas too, right? And unfortunately, like I'd like to believe that there's like an alternate version of the story, maybe a fan fiction idea brewing in my head where like Adam shows up and like challenges Satan to a wrestling match or something, or I don't know, because into like a Achilles and Hector, like,
it's like
in front of the gates.
Yes, like Adam.
Kind of thing.
Adam realizes as soon as Eve goes off, like pretty soon after, I shouldn't have let her go off. He comes as Satan sneaking up behind her, and then like I guess there wouldn't be weapons, but he just like totally just tackles him and like wrestles the snake.
It's like a Jacob wrestling like the angel of the Lord scene in Genesis. Like it's like one of those. Yeah, that's it. Always has to pop up somewhere. I'm sorry, I'm just getting sidetracked here, but
it's Thor in the Midgard.
And I'm like, hey, wait. So if this is a sidetrack, okay, one last thing. Okay, if Adam had been able to strangle and like kill the actual snake, would that mean like Satan would have had to like basically zoom back to hell, or would he just like reappeared and still been able to be there? Like, because you read in the Bibles, it's like when demons get kicked out, they basically.
That's a very interesting question. Yeah, it's like you die in a video game and like you respawn at like the last save point or something. Like,
yeah.
He's like, dang it, I have to like get past like sin and death again at the gates, and like he has to redo everything.
Oh my god!
He tried the bunny
old 80s games. There are no save points. You die and you start back at the first level. Like,
does he just keep trying different animals? Like it's a bunny next time, maybe a parrot.
I think everyone would notice like a super evil looking bunny.
There's for sure like a comedy like fan fiction to be made here that we could talk about another time for sure.
I don't think he would. God,
but, and like actually all seriousness, like what do Adam shows up, he convinces Satan, like he's just like a complete Giga Chad, and he just stands firm and convinces Satan to just step off, basically, right? Like, get out of here, man. Like, you're trash. We're not buying it. Like, we're done. Like, see you later. You're a loser. All that kind of stuff. And then, what does Satan do after that? Because he's not going to give up, right? Like, there's no way he's going to give up. He's not going to be like, oh, dang it. Like, they got me that time. I'm just going to, like, take my sorry rear end back to hell and just mope about it for the rest of eternity. Like, that's not going to happen, right? So, this is kind of what's interesting where Paralandra comes in here, because in Paralandra, right, like there isn't the green lady doesn't fall, right? So it's like then Ransom just has to like square off with the unman, right? Like they have to like just duke it out, and there's like a showdown, and it's like that's
I think
C.S. Lewis kind of like doing like not a fan fiction, but is he kind of like commenting that a little bit, right? Like is that there's got to be a connection there, right?
I think he basically writes his whole unmanned character from this. He's taking a lot from this.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think in regards to that, oh wait, what was the I started thinking about the unman. Oh my goodness. What was the question? Sorry, I lost my thought.
Yeah, just like what do they do when? What do they do if they reject
Oh
Satan on this
yes.
day? Like what
I
what
think-
happens in the future of the of unfallen Eden, where they've just told Satan off and he just has to like buzz off for like a couple hours or something? Like what goes on after that? Like
Okay, yes.
is it like Carolina where they have to like find a way to basically destroy him? Like is that the only way to make it stop? Like how does that work? Right.
I think perhaps a heavenly escort is in order for Satan. I think perhaps, and we don't, I mean, obviously the mind of God is unsearchable, but there's a sense in which having Satan enter the garden, the only reason he's allowed in, I mean, God could have stopped him at any time for his whole journey, is to basically have this opportunity to test man's faithfulness. Obviously, God in his sovereignty knowing man will fall, and then to bring the redemption of Christ, which will be like this great and glorious thing, like more glorious than even if man hadn't fallen. So it's hard to like mess with like the timeline of things, but I imagine I don't think God meant Satan to be like a permanent temptation. And if Adam, first of all, is like a physical creature, I don't think he would have been able to like be qualified to like fight a spiritual being. Like he could fight him off in terms of like not giving into his temptation, but like I don't see like a wrestling match between like Satan in his like angel form and Adam. I would say either like God sends an angel down, like Gabriel or Michael down to just like completely destroy Satan. Yep. Yeah. You were waiting for that moment.
I turned my camera off just to go get that like up on my shelf because I was like, hang on, like she's getting to it. I gotta build. So okay, thank you so much. Great job.
So funny. Okay, well I'm glad I got there. And then if not that, either way, obviously you can't really just. I guess like God could just totally obliterate Satan, but more likely he'd just get totally flattened by an angel, and then maybe God lets Abdiel loose, and then just sent right back where he belongs and fasted there for good, or unless there's another reason for God to allow him to be out.
Yeah,
That's how I see it.
I think God, what you said earlier, where God would stop him interfering if the choice was made to be obedient. I think if that were to happen, that's like there's a plan there, for mankind.
We'll never know what it was, but
yeah, no, interesting thoughts, right? It's one of those very speculative and kind of unanswerable questions, so definitely get that. Do we have anything more to say about pre-fallen Eve? Because I have something to say about Eve initially after the fall that I want to get into, but anything else before we touch on that?
I'm ready to look at that part because I think I know what part you're talking about. Like right after she falls, right?
Yes. So I was going to read for a second and read those, of course, devastating lines, but putting a 780. So saying, her rash hand in evil hour, forth reaching to the fruit, she plucked, she eat. Earth felt the wound, and nature from her seat, sighing, through all her works, gave signs of woe, that all was lost.
Oh.
Back to the thicket slunk the guilty serpent, and well might for Eve, intent now wholly on her taste, naught else regarded. Such delight till then, as seemed in fruit, she never tasted whether true or fancied so, through expectation high of knowledge, nor was Godhead from her thought. Greedily she engorged without restraint, and knew not eating death. Satiate at length and heightened as with wine, jocund and boon, thus to herself she pleasingly began. And so she'll speak there, and we'll talk about it in a second, but I'm gonna ask you what you notice about Unfallen Eve. I'm gonna kind of like just throw an obvious one out there. Basically, like greedily she engorged without restraint. So it's like she's lost like the proper virtue of temperance, right? Like she's not able to properly govern her appetites with reason, right? Like she's losing that. And there's that scene in Paralandra connection back there again where it's like Ransom eats the fruits and he's just like he eats and he's like perfectly temperate. He's not like he doesn't eat so much food that he's got a gut, like he's feeling sluggish and he's kind of bloated. He eats like just enough to be filled and he's not tempted to just sit there and pig out, basically, right? But it's like Eve, she's lost that. It's like one of the first things highlighted here is like she's lost her temperance over the way she consumes good food in a way. But what else do you notice? We get like she speaks for a little while after that scene. Like what is Eve lost? Like what do you notice instantly?
I mean, instantly I see like idolatry, like her relationship with God on her end has like fundamentally changed. She's like worshiping the tree almost as like the source of her, as if like the tree put itself there. Basically saying like she's gonna tend the tree with due praise when she doesn't really. It's like, who do you owe your praise to God? Like you've actually like abandoned your duty to God in a sense, like what you owe God, your piety. Like she no longer has that piety that she had before, or it's like misdirected towards something that it ought not to be directed towards. And then she even like just says this horrible thing. She calls God like our great forbidder, safe with all his spies about him, which is just truly like a horrendous thing to say. Of like this good God who she's been like praising and saying all this wonderful things about and like such a beautiful relationship the whole book, and then now it's just like instantly changed, and she's inclined to view God more as like he doesn't have her best interest in mind. Just like envy and like pride, basically the pride of knowledge. I mean, it's honestly just like a mess.
Yeah, some of these things all too relatable too, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a little it's a bit of a gut punch at times, that's for sure.
It was definitely rough to see Adam and Eve's dialogue, and like just starting here with Eve, start sounding a lot like our own. Because there's something kind of foreign and a little strange about their dialogue before. It's like almost, like too perfect, too good in a sense, because we just can't quite comprehend like pre-Lapsarian world. And now it's like, oh, this is all too relatable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, we'll get to that in a second, but yeah, there's definitely a little bit you want to talk about. It's kind of like that picture of Adam and Eve and how that relates to just the reality of like unfallen marriage in a sense. And I also realized that I'm the only person in this class that's ever been married before. So it's like, but you all like, without having experienced that yourself, it's like, I'm sure you still have things that are observations and things that are worthwhile to say. It's like you have friends, parents, aunts, uncles, like someone down the road that like you obviously have seen through that lens in a sense. So
and the big thing is that I noticed, I just forgot because it was like further down, is her throwing off, basically trying to cast off her God-given role as a woman and within the context of marriage. She's also like, we see this like pride and vanity where she's like seeking to increase herself, almost to like make herself like greater than Adam, like she says like even things, but even to like be superior to him, basically like so that she can be worshipped in a way that she shouldn't be, even though like Adam already like almost likes her too much sometimes, like already like he truly loves her, but she wants even more than that. Like she wants to be his like superior. Yeah. And it's wicked too to see that she basically wants Adam to share with her, whether in bliss or woe. she did basically like she's now it's like the selfishness too of like, well, I've fallen and now you're gonna fall with me, even though you could have the prospect of not.
What is she afraid of, like with Adam not falling?
That another Eve will be created in a sense, and there's like this jealousy and desire, like possessiveness, desire to be the only one and the best and better, and just this desire for Adam's like complete like adoration and like almost like worship, like supplanting God in a sense. Where it's like a twisting of like it's like of something that's already that's like good, which is her desire for Adam to love her and her alone. But then it's like now it's just completely almost like out of proportion.
Right. It makes you think like what is the proper response for Eve there? Like if we're really like thinking idealistically of like you screwed up, you fell. Just speaking like kind of just in terms of like virtue ethics here, like what actually would be like the most ideally virtuous response that Eve could have when she has fallen, but Adam has not fallen yet?
I mean, so after having fallen from eating this, would he also receive blame? Like, let's say that he said, like, she comes up and he says, like, no, I'm not going to have any. Is him like letting her go unguarded enough of an issue of like a failure?
Yeah, it is interesting.
It is a very good question. Yeah, like I'm not sure, to be honest. You wonder. Because one of the tests is to like not partake of like the fruit, but is there a sense where the obedience to God is lost because of
his
like
failure
the failed like stewardship of like the headship over the household, in a sense, like over the wife, like not properly like leading her, allowing that to happen in a way, like having some responsibility in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Let's say like hypothetically, if like that wasn't the case and like Adam could still like not fall, right? Like what would actually be like Eve's best move here, or what actually would be the most virtuous thing for her to do?
Well, certainly like with her fallen nature, like if we imagine that eating the fruit had no consequence besides, oh, you're fallen, but you don't have a fallen nature now, then she'd be like capable of this. But you know, love is wishing what is best for the beloved. So for her, if she truly like wants to love Adam like wholeheartedly and selflessly, her love would be that act would be, okay, I want what's best for him, and so I would want to warn him, what I want to confess to him what happened to me, and to like repent and tell him what I did was wrong. Don't do that. Like, don't fall with me, because like she knows that if he does fall, it's going to cause him like suffering, like the suffering of the human race. But it's almost because she's afraid that she'll be replaced, and suffer. She'd rather have him suffer with her, which almost is like a failure to exercise like perfectly selfless love for Adam, which she claims to like, oh, this is gonna be the great test when she separates from him. She's like, oh, like it'll be like this test of our love, and like really, she kind of fails to truly love Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing she could have done is exactly what you're saying, like sacrifice herself and then beg forgiveness, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. And who knows, like part of me wonders too what would have happened if Adam hadn't, like I don't know what would have happened to Eve, but certainly Adam is the covenant head, like of mankind. Like Eve sinning, just her alone, wouldn't have plunged all of mankind innocent. I don't think right. Like, is there any hope of restoration for her if Adam didn't fall? Because in a sense, she's under his headship and he didn't fall. Like there's gonna be some sort of repercussion, I guess. But that's
a really interesting question.
To bring her back, or is she just done for and she just has to be destroyed?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure. I could definitely see
Yes.
but yeah, like, is there any like redemption for her? Like, if Adam doesn't fall, is there any redemption, any way for her to be like redeemed in a sense without like, because right, like humanity, Adam and Eve both fall, like humanity inherits original sin, like redemption comes through Christ, and that's it. There is no other redemption. That's the only way it comes about, right? But it's like, how would that be the same case for Eve in a way?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I actually, I'm not sure. I've actually never like, I don't know if I've like ever like read anywhere, like heard anybody really like parse that out either way, to be honest. I'd love to hear people who are much more theologically inclined and smarter than me debate that or something, but I'm not sure.
But it also is it's just so speculative, and ultimately, like, there's no like multiverse, there's no universe where things went another way. So it's just really hard to speculate, even that early ahead, like the beginning of the human race. Like, it's just so hard to imagine the consequences of a different action.
Yeah, right. And maybe there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think it would cause problems if we could too easily imagine completely different realities than ours.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
Hey, when does Adam's first wife show up? Reddit was telling me about that character Lilith. That was just a very important part of the story.
Oh, it's in Haunted Cosmos. Yes, that's how I know about this.
There's like a Jewish mythology or something, or Mesopotamian, that Adam had a first wife that was made at the same time, and she wouldn't be subservient, and so she left Eden.
And she's like over, like, kind of like demonic.
Yeah, and like any kind of like edgelords have like latched onto that as like, oh man, they're actually like, that was the true person,
Yes, the spirit of Lilith.
There's always like these I actually would love to like read this, because I have like a weird fascination with like these really like warped, strange, like false
apocryphal,
illogical, like apocryphal versions of like things, like the Gnostic accounts of like, where like they like, in the Gnostic accounts they believe that like Jesus was just like a guy who was just basically this awful guy, and a lot of that comes from their belief that like, matter is inherently evil. But then they believe like the Christ was a separate being, that the Christ is like the incorporeal and like the good. And so they're like, oh, it's the gross fleshy Jesus and like the good Christ, and then like Jesus, I think like pushes some guy off of like a branch and he falls to his death or something. Like, it's just so strange. I think it's like the Gospel of Thomas or something like that.
Is it the Gospel of Thomas where there's the cross that talks?
I don't remember which.
I'm trying to remember which. I learned about my Testament class, and it's like
Google the Nag Hammadi library, and if you ever like just want to like just get into like the madness of just like early like patristic Gnosticism, it's so bonkers, but it's like some of it's absolutely hilarious, like, to be honest.
Because like some of the parables I've like I learned, I think it might have been in the Gospel of Thomas, but I don't remember. And it was like basically the tomb open. It's like a recount of like Jesus walking out of a tomb, basically, and like the tomb opens, and there's like these this cross comes out. Like, I guess it floats or rolls or something, with like these two angels on either side. And like the angels' heads somehow reach up to the heavens, like just the heads, not the bodies. And then like the person in the middle, the head reaches above the heavens, like not the body, it's just the head. And then the cross begins speaking and addresses the crowd and starts talking to them about like the resurrection. I just like picture these three figures with big heads walking out, and like just like the cross starts talking, and it's just like floating behind them.
This is why the authority of the creeds and the ecumenical councils needed to exist. Like, and thank God for that. Like, that's all I have to say.
Like, so then in class I was like, did the cross have like a mouth? Like, what was that? It's like, no, the voice was just coming from it, I guess.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, Adam is going to come back into the plot. And it kind of seems like at first he knows something is wrong, but he can't really pinpoint it right away. But so then Eve responds to him in lines 856 to 867 and says this. Hast thou now wondered, Adam, at my stay? Thee I have missed and thought it long, deprived thy presence, agony of love till now not felt. Nor shall be twice, for nevermore me and I to try what rash untried I sought, the pain of absence from thy sight. But strange hath been the cause and wonderful to hear. This tree is not, as we are told, a tree of danger tasted, nor to evil unknown, opening the way, but of divine effect, to open eyes and make them gods who taste, and hath been tasted such. The serpent wise, or not restrained as we, or not obeying, hath eaten of the fruit, and is become not dead, as we are threatened, but thenceforth endued with human voice and human sense, reasoning to admiration, and with me persuasively hath so revealed that I have also tasted and have also found the effects to correspond. And then she kind of gives like some descriptions there of like how that plays out. But there's like what do you notice about Eve on these lines? An alternative question to run with is also like, how should Adam respond to this? I'll take either of those.
I mean, she's certainly like kind of being deceitful, like in the way she's portraying it. Like, at least like it just comes across like she's not really saying the full truth, and even like she's not even being honest with herself about the effects of what's happened, or like how she ended up having that happen. But it seems like she's just kind of like trying to persuade Adam, likewise. Like, everything's fine, nothing happened. But then she's also admitting like the serpent, like maybe even like just explicitly disobeyed. And I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, like with the serpent, like here it's saying like the serpent wise. I mean, just in the last books, Adam was talking about how like all the beings were basically lesser than and couldn't be weren't able to be like his partner in any in a mental way or anything like that. And so her like saying the serpent's wise is kind of like throwing off even what like the hierarchy should be, and he should recognize that.
Yeah. And it says to like Eve tells her story blithely, but it says like in her cheek distemper flushing glowed, which is interesting. She's kind of trying to portray it in this like lighthearted, like, oh, look what happened to me, like in the old way she used to be. I think like a lot of times that's the tone we get from Eve, like in her unfallen state, like very blithe, like very merry and joyous. But then we see here like she's trying to replicate that tone, but something has definitely changed, and Adam like seems to be able to perceive it, because it says like he even like this part made me so garland that he had made for her, which is just super sad, and there's like symbolism there. So then he gets into his speech, which he certainly I don't think has the right reaction at all, but yeah.
Any key lines in that speech that you like highlighted, or this goes for either of you, by the way, that you wanted to point out?
Just how quickly Adam is already decided. Like, he doesn't even have to think. He's like supposed to be like all this like reason and logic and everything, and he doesn't even have to, like, he doesn't even think. he basically says, like, okay, Eve has fallen. And then his immediate conclusion, he says, certain my resolution is to die. Like, he doesn't kind of go through the possibilities, like, what should I do next? What should I say? Kind of like reasoning through, like, even like considering, like, should I fall with her? Should I not? He just immediately is like, I'm certain that I'm going to die and fall along with her because I love her so much. And certainly, like, it's revealed, like, he loves her in an inordinate way, in a way that causes him to leads to disobedience. But basically, he just instantly, like, just such a short speech. Like, I almost kind of expected from him, like, a longer discourse to himself as he's trying to decide how to respond. But his discourse is more of him just kind of revealing what's already in his mind. Like, he pretty much already knows that he's going to choose to fall as well. It's just shocking to me that he didn't have any debate or, like, any, should I do this? He just already was like, well, this is sad because guess what? This means I'm going to fall too. So it just struck me about his kind of speech to himself. It's just very uncharacteristic of him, honestly. You expect Adam to, I don't know.
Do you think that's something that's flawed on Milton's part with their writing, or do you think that it is believable? Like, do you find that actually believable that, given in this kind of Paradise Lost, that Adam would have that short of a speech and that he wouldn't grapple with this more at length?
I'd have to think about it more, but I certainly found it believable. Like, it was surprising to me, but then, like, it made sense because there's already been hints of, like, that, like, foreshadowing that Adam is going to make this choice. And I think it makes sense because, like, he's making this decision based off of, like, his, like, emotional connection, not based off of perhaps reason. And perhaps if he had spent a bunch of time, like, reasoning through things, he would have decided the better thing to do would perhaps have been to go to God and, like, perhaps plead on behalf of Eve instead of falling with her, or, like, certainly not falling himself. But I think it makes sense because the fact that he made the decision, and the way Milton's portraying it, he knew that it was wrong, and, like, but the fact that he made the decision still to fall seems not to be rooted in, like, some lengthy argument or thought, but in kind of an impulsive decision that's not rooted in rational.
Yeah, you're right. You were mentioning, like, his resolution should have been, like, to go to God and plead on her behalf. If he's going to sacrifice himself, do that rather than just, like, white knighting and following her down. Like, and throughout history and throughout any stories that we are, I guess, drawn to write to, but, like, a lot of historical accounts, men fall, like, because of women, because of their love for women, because of their lust for women. Or love for, like, a wicked woman, and not saying that Eve is, like, wicked here, but it's definitely something that we just see throughout history.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a weakness that Adam is falling prey to.
And remember that, like, Raphael seemed to be concerned about that.
Yes.
As, like, a weakness. It's one of the weaknesses we pointed out in the previous weeks, right? Where that's certainly, like, if not the most major weakness that Adam has, it's certainly one of the, like, one of, like, two or three that he does have in a sense. It's like his Adam's fall, right? Like, he scrupled not to eat against his better knowledge, not deceived, but fondly overcome with female charm. Like, it's pretty, like, explicitly, like, laid out there. Like, Adam has an improper ordo amoris here, right? Like, he has an improper, his loves aren't properly ordered, where it's like Eve is on the top of the hierarchy there of his ordered loves, right? And that's an incorrect model for us, right? Where it's like, yes, like, love of spouse, super important, super high, doesn't supplant or even go on par with love of God, right? But a proper love of spouse trickles downward from a proper love of God and a proper reverence and obedience to Him, right? So, and he loses that, like he puts Eve in the place of God in a sense, like in his heart at least, and that's like his his tragic hero fatal flaw.
Achilles heel.
It's it, right? It's like the Aristotelian tragic hero. It's like he has this one fatal flaw that brings him down. He comes down because of these. He loves Eve more than anything, including God, and in a sense choosing an unfallen life with her, despite the consequences for everything that'll come after that. Like he decides, at least at this point, that is worth it to him.
Yeah,
and I think he goes wrong.
You mentioning that made me think too, like looking back at all the speeches he gives, or like I guess just thoughts of like kind of him revisiting what he thought when he saw Eve and the certain qualities, it just kind of like darkens it a little bit, because you're like, okay, well maybe that was a sign of like you were over the top. Like at first it looks like it's just like your extreme love for her and how much you appreciate her, but then some of it's like, okay, well at that point, was it more than it should have been? Was it, like you're saying, even a little bit before putting her above God? That's a good point.
Yeah, so perfect transitions with Adam is like we said this about Eve. I was like, what do you notice about fallen Adam? Like what changed, right? Like what jumps out immediately? If you want an alternative too, you could also just say like what, like when they interact with each other too, like what do they like is there anything about like their marital relation that you notice that is like clearly explicitly or implicitly sinful? Like just things that have changed, like things that are obviously wrong that weren't there before.
I would say when she says tenderly wept much one that he, his love, had so ennobled as of choice to incur divine displeasure for her sake or death. Like she shouldn't want him to like displease God. God should be the center of their marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as soon as he does, then both of them, like, once again, just eating a bunch of the fruit. So once again, we see, like, intemperance. And let's see. And just, like, then it says, like, carnal desire and flaming. So we see, like, immediately, like, pretty much, like, lust. And, like, to a degree, that's pretty clearly portrayed as, like, wrong. Even within, like, the context of marriage. Like, there's, like, this whole bad section.
Mm-hmm.
And so that things immediately seem to have gone awry. Like from basically like as soon as Adam bowls, it's like, okay.
Yeah. Great message for the day too, by the way. It's like, especially for like, Christians, especially for like a lot of young Christians, this is like, oh, like you're married, like, you can't like possibly have like lustful relations in any sense anymore, right? It's just like, no, like the sin, like the sin, the fallen nature, the privation of nature, like it's always there, right? It's always affects you in every way in some sense, in a way. So it's like I think there's just like some general wisdom there in a sense. But of course you get like the classic too, just like the, you know, shame of nudity, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like they're looking for the fig, right?
Yep.
Like it's like that's very very like clearly like explicitly biblical there. But it's like it highlights that too. It's like there's like, you know, what is shame? It's like, well, they know now in a sense, and it's like that's there, right? There's something to that where it's like they now have the capacity to experience that, not because of an increase of nature, but because of like a loss or a perversion of the good nature which they've been given, which
And
they
then,
had.
And like after that, like a part that probably like struck me the most from this book, and it was just so sad, was the very end where they're sitting with their fig leaves on, ashamed, and they just start basically blaming each other. And they both make pretty valid points. Like each of them kind of make 2 points against the other of just like, this is your fault. But the point is like, instead of blaming themselves and focusing on their own blame, they're just basically casting stones at one another. And not, you know, in a way that's just very unkind. Like Adam, you know, like the thing that first struck me when Adam first said something to her is like, he normally always like before the fall, like he would always preface it with like, oh, like beautiful, like wonderful Eve, like something nice and complimentary. And he just immediately starts, would thou hast hearkened to my words, and basically just like complaining. He's blaming her. Even though it's his fault that, although certainly she shouldn't have done that, like she should listen to him. He also like is completely ignoring his own fault ultimately as the head of the marriage, and in letting her go. And basically he's just like, then Eve's like, yeah, she normally always has the preface too of like some nice complimentary thing about Adam. Like they always have these titles for each other. And then she's just like calls him Adam Severe. And then just, it's like their first kind of like verbal quarrel that happens. And it's just, you see that there's this lack of respect or love that's there, and this desire to like shift the blame, instead of being the first to acknowledge their own fault. Like Adam should be like, they both should be, but especially like thinking like Adam in particular as the head of the marriage, like just by virtue of that position is held a higher account. So he should be like, he should not be the first one to like be like belittling Eve in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely true. And this is so like, it's the picture of like unfallen marriage that we're given, right? And it's like this is a lot of fights and quarrels and problems occur in marriage. I mean, we hit on like two things that really, really, really cause a whole heck of a lot of divorce in our culture today, right? It's like, you know, disordered, improper sexuality, and the pride of not being able to own your problems in marriage, which you have because no matter who you are, they'll exist. And not being able to own that, not being able to say you're sorry, not being able to, you know, take on the responsibility and say like, no, I messed that up and I'm going to like repent and change and move forward. But you know, taking shots at the other person as a way to deviate from the proper path of repentance, right? It's like that's like these are like the two things. Those are like maybe like I guess you could throw in money problems, which is this doesn't really fit in the
yeah. I don't know.
Those three things are like, you know, we were talking today in like the year 2025. It's just like, you know, name three things that like, you know, no, or name other things that like destroy marriages more than those three things, right? It's like those are like the top three, I would say, and it's like that's. It's there, right? And it's like if you like there's like a message for us even today where it's like if you don't, these things are going to exist because of the fall. They just do. Like we are sinful, we've inherited original sin, they exist. If you don't properly, you know, order yourselves to God and properly deal with these things and grow in them, if you let them become a deep part of your marriage, especially for time on time, like lengthy periods of time on end, like it will destroy it. And reminding, I mean, even just like the way Satan connects with that, right? Where it's like, you know, Satan is around prowling like a roaring lion in a sense. It's like Satan loves to destroy marriages, right? And it's like Satan in a sense he's already done the work with Adam and Eve with their marriage just by causing them to fall. But it's like that's still all at work. That's still all relevant today, right? Like there's for sure a contemporary application to all of this. It's just all very real.
Yeah, and just thinking like to just Adam, like he's sitting there. What should he be thinking? He should think, I've failed in my responsibilities. Like basically, like he should be thinking to himself and like basically, like, and into the fact that he just totally shifts that responsibility to Eve, that he should be feeling the weight of, and then the fact that she then too kind of comes back, but almost I feel the most severe towards Adam in a sense. He has the last word, but also because he's like the first one to speak, and because like ultimately as the like covenant head, like he in the head of a marriage, like he has a greater degree of like he should not be the one to cast the blame, even though Eve is to blame for a lot. That's not his role in a sense. Like his role as a man is like to kind of like take responsibility for the people under his charge in a sense. And like you see that with like other leaders and just like any other leadership position. Like someone under you might do something bad, and like it might not be your fault, but you have to like take responsibility. In this case, it was still Adam's fault too.
Yeah, absolutely. And but interestingly enough, and we'll obviously get into this with the other books and won't say this too much, but it's like knowing too that's like there is a path forward for them, right? And it's like it's different for Adam and Eve because like they're the first people, they're the only people that exist, right? Like they don't have like the church in a sense, right? Like there's like a different way where it's like they can't just like but they do have like they have like Michael's gonna come, right? So it's like they have like Michael in a sense, like they have this way to relate back to God, and it's just in a very different way than like we would today, in a way like where we would you know you'd like go in like these situations, like you'd go to the church and like receive counseling, right? Like depending on your background and tradition, you may like go to confession and receive absolution, right? Like just depending, but it's like there's like the church doesn't exist, or certainly not literally physically in that form in this time, so they have to they kind of have to wait it out for like Michael to come, but who knows if they even could like in any way like turn and begin to repent without that, right? Like it's hard to say. Any final thoughts in general? Well, I will leave us with the last three lines then, because they are worth ending on, and Milton certainly seems to agree. Thus they in mutual accusation spent the fruitless hours, but neither self-condemning, and of their vain contest appeared no end. Very fitting for what we just discussed. So leaves us there. It's very tragic. Thankfully, it doesn't end there. We will see what happens in the next couple of books, and of course, like we know the story. We know the story of Scripture, thankfully. So it's like that's always our great hope, right? Like it's always there. Like the gospel's always there. So we know that, thankfully. It'd be hard to read Paradise Lost without that. But of course, many secularists, for some reason, read and enjoy Paradise Lost and probably get a lot of things wrong anyway. So, but I will end the recording there. We will be at book 10 next week, so we will continue on the story of what happens after the fall, and there will be a lot of good things to get into there too. Books 9 and 10 are like a lot of people's favorites, because it's just really like the meat and potatoes of all the tragic elements of the Paradise Lost story. So we will continue that on next week.
Awesome.